The sun had barely risen in Umochala village and the roosters were still competing over who had the loudest crow. But Juliana was already awake. She wasn't farming and she wasn't fetching water like her mates. Her job was far more important. She tied her old feathered wrapper across her chest, tied another loosely around her waist and dragged a plastic chair outside her compound. Right there by the roadside, she positioned herself like a broadcaster ready to deliver breaking news. In fact, people jokingly called that her chair a studio. Her voice was sharper than the village town crier's gong. Have you people heard what happened to Mama Kechi last night? She began, even though no one had asked her anything. Two women passing by slowed down. Of course, who doesn't like gist? What happened again? One of them asked cautiously. Juliana adjusted herself dramatically, then shouted so loud for the whole street to hear. They said her husband came back late last night, and instead of knocking on their door, he went to that widow's house at the junction. The women gasped and shook their heads. They knew Juliana had a tongue sharper than razor, but somehow she always spoke with so much confidence that lies sounded like truths. Every morning was like that. Before children even brushed their teeth, they would hear snippets of her broadcast. Before goats were untied from their night robes, they already knew who fought with who borrowed salt and didn't return the plate, and who bought meat on credit at the market. To Juliana, gossip was not just a habit, it was a full-time profession, and in her mind, she was serving the community by simply exposing secrets. Her husband, Mr. Chike, hated it. Many times he would beg, Juliana, face your business. Leave people alone before wahala will come. But she will always reply, old man, go and mind your farm. If I don't talk, who will? Am I supposed to sit like a log? By 9 a.m. that morning, half the village already knew the breaking news about Mama Kechi's husband, all thanks to her. And by evening, the couple started quarreling over a revelation that started from Juliana's plastic chair studio. She smiled as she heard it. She was satisfied with herself. In her heart, she thought, without me, this village would be so boring. I am the salt in this place. Little did she know that the same salt will soon enter her own soup and it will be too salty for her to swallow. One day, she was fanning herself with an old newspaper when a young woman approached her quietly. It was Ngozi, the village teller's wife. She looked around like a thief about to steal mango. When she finally reached Juliana's studio, she bent low and whispered, Auntie Juliana, good morning, ma. Juliana adjusted herself and sat up like a queen, granting audience. Morning, my dear. Hope your husband has not started misbehaving again, no. Ngozi's eyes widened. No, Auntie, God forbid. I actually came to beg you for something. Juliana smirked. Beg me? Go on. Ngozi rubbed her palms deviously. Please, Auntie. I heard you told Mama Esther last week that my husband was always eyeing that lady that sells bill cake at the junction. It nearly caused fight between us. But Auntie, it is not true. My husband only buys akara there because it is cheaper. Please, I am begging you, don't scatter my home. Juliana leaned back, burst into laughter that echoed across the streets, then shook her head dramatically. Chai! Women of nowadays, that's how you keep on covering up for the gender that betrayed Jesus, and they will be doing more. Well, if I say something, it's because my eyes have seen it. I don't gossip, I only reveal. Ngozi almost knelt down. Please, Auntie Juliana, I know you like me. Just leave our names out of your revelations. I beg you in the name of God. Instead of answering, Juliana picked up her cup of water, sipped it noisily, and waved her hand like a judge passing judgment. My sister, you can go. But remember, truth is like smoke. It cannot be hidden. If your husband is innocent, he has nothing to fear. But if he's guilty, he will keep on entering my studio. She wasn't an ordinary gossip. She was a professional in the art of collecting information. If the FBI had a branch in Umuchala village, she would have been their chief spy. Her tricks were so many. She had ears sharper than a rabbit's and legs lighter than a cat's. Wherever people were whispering, she would find a way to be there. One evening, two women were discussing quietly behind someone's kitchen. They thought they were safe. Suddenly she appeared and said, continue. What did he say again? The women frowned. Juliana, please, this one is a secret though. But before the night ended, the half-heard conversation had turned into a full-blown story that traveled to several compounds, courtesy of Juliana BBC. But our most reliable reporters were the village children. Anytime she saw them playing, she would call one over and offer granules or biscuits. Chukudi, you are a sharp boy. Tell me, what did your mommy and daddy quarrel about last night? Chukwudi would scratch his head and say something small like, they were talking about money. Juliana's eyes would shine. By the time she repeated it, she would garnish it and say, Chukwudi's father is broke. He even wants to marry a second wife because his wife is not bringing money home. Sometimes she would even tiptoe near windows at night when couples were quarreling, and the next morning she would narrate word for word what was said, adding extra pepper to make it juicy. It reached a point where people in the village became afraid to even sneeze too loud because Juliana might hear and turn it into a headline. She was feared like Juju. If she mentioned your name in her gossip, people believed it even when it was a lie. Her husband, poor Mr. Chike, shook his head every day. He told her one night, Juliana, you are drinking people's tears and laughing. Just know that one day you will choke. But Juliana only rolled her eyes, waved her hand and said, Old man, leave me alone. If truth burns people, then let them wear fireproof skin. One weekday, which was like every other day to her, she sat on her plastic chair studio sipping garri with granules and looking for who to drag next. As fate will have it, she saw Mr. Uche, a hard-working carpenter, walking home with his cousin, a young woman who had come from the city to visit. They were laughing and chatting, carrying some things. That was all Juliana needed. She stood up dramatically and shouted loud enough for people to hear. Women, open your eyes, oh. I have got another one red-handed. Uche is now carrying girlfriend around in broad daylight. He even bought her plenty things, yet his wife is struggling. Within minutes, a small crowd gathered. Juliana narrated the scene with hand gestures like a Nollywood actress. She painted it so convincingly that people believed. The story spread to Mrs. Uche before her husband even reached home. And by the time Mr. Uche entered the compound sweating from the sun, his wife was already boiling like water for a bath. So this is what you have been doing behind my back, Abby? She shouted, blocking the door. What are you saying? He asked, confused. Don't pretend. The whole village knows you and that city girl. You have disgraced me. Mr. Uche was shocked. City girl? Haba now. That was my cousin Amara. She came to see my mother. But his wife refused to listen. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the truth is established. So many people in this village cannot be lying. From that day, their home turned into a battlefield. Every laughter became suspicion, and every late return became an affair. They quarreled morning and night. One evening, Mrs. Uche even packed her clothes and stormed out to her parents' house shouting, You better marry that your Amara, since you want to kill me with shame. The poor man cried. He begged and even swore on his father's grave, but his wife's ears were blocked by Juliana's voice. The marriage finally broke down. Mrs. Uche moved permanently to her father's house. Meanwhile, Amara, the innocent cousin, left the village in shame, refusing to ever return. Her reputation was stained by a lie she didn't even know existed. And in the midst of all this, Juliana sat outside her compound, picking her teeth with satisfaction, bragging. Didn't I say it? Didn't I warn her? Men are like goats, always chasing new grass. To her, it was just another episode of village entertainment, but to the Uche's family, it was the death of love, trust, and peace. That night, Mr. Chike, her husband, looked at her with sorrow. Juliana, you destroyed the marriage with your mouth. One day, mark my words, your own mouth will destroy this house too. But Juliana only laughed and waved him off. Old man, I beg leave me. Oh. If people can't handle small truths, let them go and live inside the bush. She didn't know her husband's words were prophecy, and the same gossip she used to scatter others would soon scatter her own roof. Did she stop? For where? Instead, she grew worse. One hot afternoon, she sat outside in her favorite satellite spot, chewing roasted corn, when she saw Chinedu, the village maxim, chatting with a female trader. He was only buying palm oil, but to her sharp gossip eyes, it was already an evidence. She hissed loudly, shaking her head like a disappointed mother. Another one? So these men cannot change. Even when their wives are pregnant, they are still chasing other women. Before the trader could even wrap Chinedu's palm oil, Juliana had carried the news in her mouth. That evening, as some villagers gathered under the tree to relax, she started her usual broadcast. My people, do you know where I saw Chinedu this afternoon? He was standing like a cockerel in front of that fat palm oil seller, smiling with all his teeth. I mean, all his teeth, and using his hands on her. His wife is pregnant at home, yet he is busy planning to get a second wife. The people gasped. This one is not good, oh. Juliana, are you even sure? More than sure, Seth, Juliana snapped. Mark my words, one day you will see that palm oil woman double. These men, they don't respect anybody. Of course, it didn't take long for Ngozi, Chinedu's heavily pregnant wife, to hear the story. She was in her 7th month, fragile and emotional. That night, she confronted her husband in tears. So it is true, Chinedu. After everything we have been through together, you are planning a second wife? Chinedu was shocked. Ngozi, how can you even believe that nonsense? I only bought palm oil. Must I frown while buying the palm oil? But Ngozi was inconsolable. She cried so much that her blood pressure rose. By midnight, she started feeling sharp pains in her stomach. Her neighbors rushed her to the health center, fearing she might even lose the baby. The next morning, angry voices filled the village. If anything happens to Ngozi or her baby, it will be on Juliana's head. That her mouth is more dangerous than poison. She has no pity and shame at all. But Juliana stood her ground. Am I the one that told Chinedu to stand and smile with that female trader? I beg you, if the truth hurts, let everyone use paracetamol. Even as Ngozi lay in the hospital bed fighting for her unborn child, Juliana still bragged. She didn't know the community had started secretly wishing for the day she would test her own medicine. That evening, her husband, Mr. Chike, couldn't hold back his tears. He told her, Juliana, a pregnant woman almost lost her life because of you. Can't you see? This gossip is no longer an entertainment. It is witchcraft without a broom. But Juliana only hissed. This man, leave me, Joe. Everything I say, you twist it against me. She didn't realize she was writing her own destiny in ink that would soon stain her marriage permanently. By now, she was no longer an ordinary villager. She had become a brand. Everywhere you turned, her name was in people's mouths, sometimes in fear and other times in laughter. The youth nicknamed her BBC Juliana because just like the BBC News, she always had a fresh story, except that hers were more dangerous. Soon, people stopped inviting her to ceremonies, especially marriage ceremonies, because they were scared their in-laws would hear what they didn't say. But instead of being ashamed, Juliana wore her reputation like a crown. She would sit in her usual spot like an unbothered queen. She felt untouchable and she thought her words made her powerful. While her mouth was the loudest in Umochala village, her husband was the complete opposite. He was a quiet man with patience that surprised everyone. Where Juliana was fire, he was water. Where she scattered, he tried to gather. Every morning while Juliana dragged her chair to the studio, Mr. Chike would quietly pick up his hoe and head to the farm. Better to sweat in the sun, he often told himself, than sit and listen to my wife carry people's name like a basket of tomatoes. In the evenings, he would return only to meet his wife in the middle of another gossip session. He would drop his load, shake his head and ask, "Are you not even tired? One day you will say the one that will chase us out of this village. Do you even know why people fear gossips more than thieves? A thief can only take your property, but a gossip takes your peace, your name, your marriage, and sometimes even your life." Juliana burst into laughter, slapping her thighs. "Old man, I beg go and rest. You are only jealous of my fame." The man suffered quietly. Some villagers even mocked him behind his back, but he endured, prayed every night for God to touch her heart. One market day, Juliana was in her element. She had gathered 3 women, fanning herself with a broken tray and narrating stories like a professional broadcaster. That was when she spotted Daisy, the only daughter of Chief Okoro, the wealthiest man in Umochala. Daisy had just returned from the city carrying a small bag. She stopped by to greet a young pastor. They spoke for less than 5 minutes, but in Juliana's sharp eyes, it was already a scandal. By evening, the news flying around in the village was that Daisy and the pastor are lovers. When the rumor reached Chief Okoro, his pride scattered. He stormed into his compound, roaring like a lion. "Daisy, so after sending you to school in the city, you were sneaking with the poor pastor?" Daisy fell on her knees. "Papa, that's not true. I only greeted him." Chief Okoro swore that the person who has spoiled his daughter's name will never escape his wrath, and so he swung into action. Even the poor pastor wasn't spared. His congregation reduced overnight because people whispered that he was eating the fruit of the chief's daughter. He tried explaining, but who listens when Juliana had already spoken? One day, Madam Juliana had gone to the market to buy vegetables. As she bargained with the seller, a young man carrying planks walked past. He greeted politely. "Auntie Juliana, good afternoon." Juliana, feeling important, smiled back. "Obina, my son, how are you? Carry your load carefully and don't break your waist." The boy laughed and kept walking. Simple, ordinary greeting, but for Umochala village, that was enough. Courtesy of Chief Okoro. 2 women standing nearby looked at each other and smirked. So it is Obina now. Did you see the way she smiled? Another added, even the way Obina laughed. Here, love is sweet though. By evening, the story had grown wings. Have you heard? Juliana is chasing small boys in the market. They say she is now Obina's sugar mommy. For the first time, Juliana wasn't the broadcaster, she was the news. She returned home that evening to find neighbors whispering as she passed. Some women ran ahead of her shouting, "BBC Juliana and Obina. BBC Juliana and Obina." They even added claps. Juliana stopped in shock. "What are you children saying? What kind of useless song is that?" But they only laughed and scattered, leaving her confused. By the time she got home, Mr. Chike was waiting. His face was heavy with silence. "Juliana," he called her slowly. "Is it true what people were saying?" Juliana's eyes widened. "What are they saying again?" "That you and Obina." He didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of the words hung in the air. Juliana exploded. "Tofiakwa, God forbid. Me? With that small boy?" It was an ordinary greeting. But for the first time, her husband didn't defend her. He simply shook his head and said, Now you know how it feels. This is how you have been destroying others with your tongue. The next morning, women gathered at the stream. Instead of waiting for Juliana's news, they started giving their own. Did you hear about Juliana and Obina? Yes, oh. I heard he even calls her sweet auntie. Some burst into laughter, others clapped their hands mockingly. When Juliana arrived with her buckets, the laughter doubled. One woman deliberately shouted, "Make way, oh. Obina's wife is coming to fetch water." Juliana nearly dropped her bucket in shame. Her body trembled. She realized that the same gossip she threw like stones had now landed on her own head. She went home that day, sat on her plastic chair studio, but no words came out. For the first time since her gossip career, BBC Juliana had nothing to say. The rumor of Juliana and Obina spread faster than Harmattan fire. By now, the entire village had chewed and swallowed it. Even those who never liked her were secretly happy. At last, the lioness had fallen into her own trap. One evening as the sun was setting, Obina passed by Juliana's compound carrying firewood. A group of young men deliberately shouted, "Hey, Obina, enter and greet your wife Juliana now. She's waiting for you." Mr. Chike was sitting in the compound. He heard everything and felt embarrassed. That night, he looked at Juliana and said, "Woman, I warned you. I begged you to leave people's home alone, but you refused. Now see, it is your name on everybody's lips. I can't live like this anymore. I would rather sleep on the farm than be mocked as the husband of Obina's woman." Juliana burst into tears. "Chike, you want to believe all those lies? After all these years together? It was just a greeting." But Chike shook his head. "Juliana, how many innocent greetings did you also twist into adultery and scandal? How many wives cried because of you? Now it is your turn, so test your own medicine." He packed a small bag, lifted his walking stick and walked into the night. Days later, the news was everywhere. Most villagers were so happy. She scattered other people's marriages. Now her own is in pieces. Kamma is so sweet. Juliana remained indoors. For the first time in her life, she felt the sharp knife of shame cutting her deeper than any insult she had ever thrown at others. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed, but her tears could not wash away the damage. From that week, people began to use her as a proverb. If someone gossiped too much, they would say, "Careful, unless you want to end up like Juliana." Days turned into weeks, but things didn't get better for Juliana. Her husband refused to return. Villagers said he now slept peacefully in his farm hut, far away from the noise of gossip. Juliana was left alone in the compound. Her once noisy studio was silent. Nobody stopped to greet her and nobody asked for any news. The same neighbors who once gathered at her chair now crossed the road to avoid her. Even in the mandated women's meeting, they ignored her contributions. If she says anything, no matter how good it was, another woman will quickly counter it. No, let's not forget though, this is Juliana and nothing good can come out from her mouth. If she gathers the courage to go to the stream, women will stop fetching water. Some will mutter boldly, "You better keep quiet before Juliana carries your gist." Others will laugh and say, "Who will believe her again? If only she used her mouth to say good things instead of gossiping, maybe she would have still have her home and her dignity today." And so, Juliana became an early riser just to escape the insults of the villagers. But some of them were ready for her. They didn't give her breathing space at all. They joined the early risers gang just to be the weapon fashioned against her. And so, finally, she relocated. Until today, nobody had heard anything about her in the village. Hey, Africa Tales by Kamma Tribe, how are you all doing? For me, I am doing just fine. Let me ask you, did you enjoy the story as much as I did? If yes, let me get to read from you in the comments. Let me even say this. Gossip looks small, a word here and a story there, but it can scatter marriages, destroy reputations, and even kill. If you hear something, ask yourself, if it was my own secret, would I want it spread? If not, then you have to keep it. Don't let your tongue make you an enemy to people around you. Let me even ask you, have you ever had a gossip as a friend before? How did it affect you, and how did you finally detach yourself? Share your experience with me in the comments. Don't forget to give the story a thumbs up, share to your loved ones, subscribe to this channel if you have not, and until I bring another interesting story your way, it's a goodbye from here, and God bless you.